One of the hardest things I had to learn in real estate is this. The highest offer is not always the best offer, but it often wins anyway. Quick pause for context. When I say LOI, I'm talking about a letter of intent. It's a non-binding document that outlines the price and the key terms that you're going to be proposing before a deal ever goes under contract. So, just put in today's terms, think of it like messaging on a dating app. You're not engaged, you're not even on the phone yet. You're just saying, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for, and if this aligns with you, let's keep this thing going. Back to the story. But early on, I believed that if I did the work, really did the work, that would matter more than anything else. I treated an LOI like a real commitment. Before I submitted my very first one, I didn't want to rely on assumptions or optimism. I wanted to understand the property, so I did what everyone says you should do, but very few people, turns out, actually do. I called in favors. Contractor friends walked the property for me and gave me real estimates on what improvements would actually cost. My property management team walked the property with me not once but multiple times. We talked through operations, tenant issues, deferred maintenance, and what was cosmetic versus what was structural. And I wanted to be confident that the number I put on paper was real, not aspirational, not padded, but real based on everything I could see. Now, of course, further inspection needed to be done on the behind the walls stuff, but based on what I could see, this was a very real number, and I submitted that LOI. I knew it was the highest number I could possibly offer, and I felt great about it. I knew I was in the game. I remember when I was pressing like the submit button on my mouse, I was like shaking. I was so excited because I'd put so much work into this and there was a lot riding on it. And at this point, I had a solid relationship with a broker. I'd spent a lot of time developing that, and there was real dialogue. It felt like a very serious process. Then, at the last minute, something happened. Another offer came in significantly higher. So much higher that it didn't make sense under any reasonable underwriting scenario. I could not fathom how this number came to be. I remembered, I was completely flabbergasted. Not because I lost, but because there was no way that number was real. I had just spent weeks validating every assumption, calling in every favor, doing everything I could to make sure my offer reflected reality. And suddenly, a number appeared that ignored all of that. Thankfully, the broker was transparent with me and told me that the seller wanted to vet out this other offer anyway, simply because it was so much higher. Even though there wasn't much confidence in the buyer from their side either. But from the seller's perspective, that makes sense, I get it. When a number is materially higher, it is hard to try or to not take the time to at least explore it. So that was my first real exposure to how the LOI process actually works. What I didn't understand yet was that not everyone submits an LOI as a real number. Some people submit an LOI as a way to get control of a deal. And this happens a lot. They submit it as a way to buy time, a way to get inside the data room and figure it out later. Now, that strategy can work, especially for buyers who are comfortable retrading or walking away. But it creates a distorted environment for buyers who are trying to be disciplined. But I want to say, here is the part that matters. That deal with that other buyer, it didn't close. Months went by, then more months, and last I heard, nearly 9 months later, the property still has not sold. The high offer fell through, the deal stalled out, momentum has disappeared, and the property's just sitting in limbo. So it was wild. All this to say, that experience taught me something early on that took a lot of pressure off of me later. Remember, I was like shaking about this first LOI? But here's the lesson. Losing a deal does not mean that you were wrong. It often just means that you were disciplined in an undisciplined environment, and there are many different motivations in this business. Some are return driven, some are tax driven, some are timing driven. Some are simply trying to place large amount of capitals really quickly. They're not all solving for the same outcome. That's really important to understand for your psyche. So when you see numbers that don't make sense to you, it doesn't always mean you're missing something. Sometimes it just means you are playing a completely different game. Submitting a real LOI takes more work than submitting an optimistic one, for sure. It means walking the property, asking uncomfortable questions, understanding that not all value add is cosmetic. Some of it is operational, some of it is structural, and some of it is cultural within the tenant base. And some of it is just expensive. When you submit a real LOI, you're saying this is what I can actually execute, not this is what I hope works out. That distinction matters because tying up a property with an unrealistic offer doesn't just affect you. It affects the seller. It affects the broker. It affects other buyers. It slows everything down. So this is the part I want to be very clear, especially for newer people to this space. If you're disciplined, you will lose deals. Sometimes to people who should not win them. And if you don't understand what's happening, that can mess with your confidence. You can start second guessing your process. You might feel like you need to be more aggressive. You might feel like you're doing something wrong. You're not. This is just how the game is played. What matters is what you do next. Over time, the brokers see patterns. They see who retrades, they see who disappears, they see who closes quietly and professionally. That reputation takes time to build, but once it's there, it becomes a great asset. The highest LOI might win the headline and maybe even the day, but the most credible buyer wins the long game. This is a great example of why I care so much about process, why I care about understanding a deal before price ever enters the conversation, and why I don't believe in submitting numbers just to see what happens. Discipline, it doesn't always feel rewarding in the moment, that's for sure, but it is the difference between building momentum and burning energy, between the progress, the noise, the growth, the burnout. If you are early in this business and you're running into this, I want you to hear me. You are not alone. It's not because you messed up. It's not because you didn't try hard enough. It's not because you're playing a long game in a short-term environment. Take the lesson, keep your standards, and trust that disciplined process compounds, even when it doesn't win immediately. In the next video, I'm gonna break down how I actually vet a deal before price ever enters the conversation, so you can see exactly how this discipline shows up in practice.